listening to ZA Talk Radio.
Follow us on Twitter at ZA Talk Radio.
Yes, that's right. You're listening to ZA Talk Radio with myself, Julian, your host, and my co-host, esteemed Dr. Faiz Kirsten. Say hi to the people, Doctor.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to ZA Talk Radio.
It might seem like Faiz represents the establishment, but I assure you he does not. He's somebody that's been on the other side of the fence and was enlightened. So, yeah, this is ZA Talk Radio. We didn't record our intro last night due to a lot of technical glitches we were having. So we're busy re-recording it now. And just to give you a brief overview of what we are all about, we are radio for the people, by the people. And it's a platform just for us to engage and start a dialogue about all sorts of things that we feel are important and pertain to the changes we need to see in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to see changes in the world. You know, we're living in a very, let me put it, scary world. People are not aware really of what's going on. The masses, certainly, my understanding or my discovery was that a lot of people don't really know what's going on in the world. And so ZA Talk Radio is really here to create critical awareness, you know, of what is happening in the world and to help achieve freedom for humanity. We try to play a little role that we can in trying to achieve this freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you haven't already, guys, you can follow us on Twitter at ZA Talk Radio. We do post some fascinating stuff about all sorts of things that we discuss on the show and just things that interest us. We've also got a Facebook page. It's ZA Talk Radio. These talks will also be available to be listened to afterwards on SoundCloud. And you can just follow us like a series. You can follow us and follow our progression. This week, we've got 2 fantastic guests lined up for you. Just to give you a taste, next week, we've got one of the most fantastic stories that we're about to let unfold on the show. Maybe you want to tell us a bit about that, Faiz?
Yes. One of the services that I offer is natural cancer cures. I've been doing a lot of research into cancer because as a doctor, you know, over the years, I've seen this. It's a crisis and it's getting worse every year. I mean, millions die each year across the world from this scourge, as I like to refer to it as. And I was interested in how did this crisis come about. Did a lot of research. And so our guest next week is a patient or a person who has been suffering from cancer, and she's going to tell us, explain to us, describe to us her journey with cancer over the last few years. Very interesting story, and I'm sure we'll get to learn a lot from her about cancer.
Yeah, looking forward to that talk. And just on the notes, while we're doing an introduction, I just wanted to thank the Metalloid Lab, Gary Arsenic, for that fantastic introductory beat there, and to the young Isabella for letting us know that you are listening to ZA Talk Radio. So this week's guests, we've got who coming up, Faiz? Tell us a little bit about them.
We've got 2 guests this evening. First one is Ken Cooper, who is a specialist in permaculture, and that's a very interesting topic also. And the second guest is Brother Thomas, who's a people's attorney, and he's going to talk to us on foreclosures, the common law, tell us a bit about what's happening with the International Tribunal for Natural Justice. Sounds like a long name or word or term, but he'll describe that to us to a degree. And, so those are our 2 guests this evening. We'll look forward to hearing what they have to say.
Cool. So you've heard it, and this is where we're at, and this is what we're about to do. We're about to introduce our first guest, and do spread the link around. Spread this around to all your like-minded people, and even not like-minded people, because we plan to educate on this platform and educate ourselves as well. We don't assume that we know everything. We just want to start a conversation. We want to start talking about this because the mainstream doesn't really want to engage in these topics. They don't want to talk. They want to know about things that actually are important. They want to distract. That's the main objective of the mainstream. So let's get right into it.
On that point, maybe if I can come in here, Julian, that's a very important point you bring up about distraction. In fact, we live in a world of deception. When I discovered this, it really concerned me. I've been researching for many years in different fields, and I got to realize that, in fact, we live in a world of deception. And one of the areas I researched was the human mind. And it's important for people to understand, how the mind works, because those who are controlling us know exactly how the mind works, and they use that knowledge basically to keep us enslaved. And so I can give you many examples of how we are deceived. That'll maybe a show on its own, actually. But I'll give you just 2 or 3 examples. One is in the food that we eat. And our guest is going to be talking about permaculture, our first guest. So maybe this is an important, appropriate point to bring up. The food we eat really is a lot of processed food. And it's called food, but it's not really food. Because if you look at the definition of food, its functions are really to produce energy, stimulate growth, and to maintain life. And in fact, what people are eating today is not food, as I said, because it causes illness and disease rather than producing energy and stimulating growth. And in fact, what we eat today generally doesn't maintain life at all, but causes premature death. Another important, example would be bank loans. Most people believe that when they go to a bank for a loan, they're actually getting a loan. But that's completely untrue. It's not a loan at all. And that may be surprising to many people who don't really know this. And there's many other examples. I'll quickly give another one is, we refer to our healthcare system as a healthcare system. But in fact, it's not about healthcare at all. It's about sick care or disease management. And when I discovered that, I realized, doctors or conventional doctors have been duped, really, in their training. And they're basically serving a certain agenda. They've been trained to serve a certain agenda. And so, this is important for people to understand the distraction, or rather, I call it the deception that's going on in the world. And it's very important for people to be aware of this. And just a final example, I think it's important also, deception involving your name. Your very name is basically a deception.
Yeah,
but anyway,
we're gonna get into all these things in a lot more detail, and this is just to basically give you an overview about what our ethos is, where we're trying to come from, what discussions we'd like to have, as the people. So we'll be straight off the break with our first guest, Kent Cooper, permaculture specialist.
You're listening to ZATR Talk Radio.
Follow us on Twitter at ZA Talk Radio.
So Kent, are you there, brother?
Yes. How's it, man? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you very clearly. Welcome, and thanks for accepting our invitation to join us this evening and tell us about what you do and how we can make a better world, with what you do. How we can create a better world. That's a big ask, but hey, you're the guru.
How's it, Ken?
Yeah, thanks, guys. How's it, man? It's good to be here, and a pleasure to be able to talk on this subject. It is a passion of mine. I'm not going to speak much about myself other than say that when I left university in the early 90s, I had a very clear understanding that we needed to do something about the way the world was functioning and where it was heading. And I became acutely aware that there were huge challenges facing humanity. And I began a endeavor to find ways of creating an alternative future that kind of dealt with the core challenges that everybody faces day to day. And that brought me to becoming aware of permaculture as a design science. And within that system of permaculture, I understood it to provide solutions to our challenges. So to cut a long story short, I began applying the basic principles that I was learning. And, ever since then, I've just been going along this ever-expanding and diversifying trajectory with permaculture. And, over the last 20 years or so, I've focused on setting up projects in different contexts in which I myself have lived at the center of the projects. And, today I do training in permaculture. I consult in permaculture. I farm. I've got a farm out in the semi-desert Western Cape side, and I'm setting up a commercial-scale permaculture farm as an example system and as an experiment. So that's more or less me. And let's take it away.
Wow, well, that's fantastic. Thanks for that background, Kent. Appreciate it. I have 2 questions. I want to kick off with 2 questions. The first one is obviously, what is permaculture and how did it start? Then you can walk us through, what your topic is all about. And I like the term, what you mentioned. They don't like it, but unfortunately, it's appropriate. Predatory predatory civilization, that's what I'd really like to know about. Okay, Ken, so what is permaculture and how did it start?
Well, look, it's a very complex subject. I'll push it forward in the simplest way possible. And there's a lot of misunderstanding around it because people tend to associate it with farming and getting back to the land and living primitively. But what it actually is a design science, or let me put it more succinctly, an ecological design science, whereby we apply a set of ecological principles and natural law into the social economic context that we all live in, with the objective of redesigning that context into what I would call a cultivated ecosystem. And this is a critical thing to understand because life is an ecosystem and the universe is alive and it functions according to very specific scientific principles that are well measured out and understood. You can call it ecosystems theory, but the laws of physics playing into it as well. So what permaculture essentially did, and it originated in the 1970s through a academic, Bill Mollison, who was working at a university, and he was faced with the same context we all are, and he went off into the hills and lived in the forests for a while, with his objective being finding a solution to the challenges. And there he saw natural systems, how they worked. And he thought, well, what we need to do ultimately is to mimic these natural systems in our society. And he came up with this design system, which he termed permaculture, which is essentially now, in the current day and age, is a kind of condensing of the idea of permanent culture. So it originally started as permanent agriculture, but it is now seen as meaning permanent culture, because if we wish to live on indefinitely into the future, in permanence, then we need to create a permanent, sustainable base to that culture. And so we would probably begin generating resources on an agricultural level, but that's just the start. And to get to the point, is we would redesign our entire civilization into a global, collective, integrated ecosystem. So, without going into any more detail, broadly, that's what it is.
Yeah, well, I remember while I was doing a bit of background research, I came across the fact that the prime directive of permaculture, according to Bill Mollison, as you say, is the father of permaculture, is the only ethical decision is to take responsibility for our own existence and that of our children. Can you talk to that, Kent?
Yes, well, I mean, if one understands how ecosystems work, there is an extreme form of localization, that every component of the ecosystem takes absolute care of itself. There's no central system that coordinates, guides, manages. Each part of the whole plays a role in the whole, is interconnected in the whole through a vast array of complex interrelationships. And so as human beings, I think where we found ourselves is and this maybe talks to an initial question you put to me, this concept of a predatory civilization. Yes. Is that we've handed over our power and our responsibility to entities outside of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so we've looked to leaders, we've looked to political systems, we've looked to organizations to manage our lives, and we've handed over our power and responsibility and our liability into centralized systems. And these centralized systems over time have just increased their centralizing capacity. And it kind of touches on what you were talking about introducing the show, whereby the game that we are in at the moment is not about empowering human beings. It's not about strengthening our connection to the source of all life, nature. It's about centralizing power and resources and energy into the hands of very few people. And if we wish to turn that around, we've got to take that power back. And this is what permaculture is about, really, is about relocalizing the resources and capacity into the people themselves.
So the ultimate goal of those in control, we call them the globalists, the elite, the top 1%, the elitists. You're saying then the ultimate goal is centralized control, controlling the entire world from a central position. Is that correct? And we need to counteract that with localization.
Yeah, look, I mean, if you're going to create a future, if it's going to be a future, it has to be sustainable. One has to recognize the current status quo and understand it, because you cannot build anything without awareness and clear understanding of what's happening now. And so, from a permaculture perspective, when we design, we observe and interact with reality, and we come to an awareness of what's going on. And then we respond to that creatively through this design science. And this design science really is an application of a set of principles and, more importantly, an ethical construct. And I think what we find in society is a chronic lack of ethics. What we find in society is we are driven by profit, and any means to a profit is acceptable. We have supposedly a rule of law, but those laws have been written by the very people at the top of the pile for their own benefit. So the ethics have gone from it.
Well, there seems to be no ethics, actually, if you look at it, yeah.
Exactly. It's got no ethics. So with permaculture, we're saying, well, each human being is living here now in the present moment. They're surrounded by resources, human resources, natural resources that actually, if understood, have infinite potential. There's no limitation within them. And I think the very important thing to understand with permaculture is it's focalized in the living. It's a living system. It engages and integrates into the living spectrum. It is a life investment. While if we look at the what we'd call maybe the neo-capitalist system, it's an artificial system. And everything within it is based on an artificial resource or an artificial idea. And our entire society is based on oil at this point in time, or various fossil fuel products. And that facilitates centralization because there's a scarcity there, and those resources can be controlled, and they can then be transformed in factories that are controlled, and they can then be drip-fed into society, which is what we've got. So we've got a social structure that is artificial. And, if you look at it very carefully, it's a pattern. And it has a very specific structure, and it's got lots of different archetypes built into that pattern that range right through it. So you could almost say it's a holographic image of a centralized categorical system, while permaculture on the other side of the coin is a holographic integrated system that is decentralized, integrated, and localized. And it is based in the natural living system. And the purpose of it is to create opportunity for life and to support more life. So the one is an artificial system, one is a life-generating system.
Okay, well, you spoke about oil. I would imagine permaculture, or you call them permaculturists, would it be? Would that be the right term?
Yes.
Okay, permaculturists. They obviously wouldn't want to be using oil. I imagine none of them are using oil at the moment, as the energy supply, energy source. Is that the case? Do they use oil still, or are they all using alternative energy supplies, such as solar, wind, etc.?
I think you've got to look at existence from the perspective of a transition, a process. You've got a pattern, which is a specific structure that you're trying to manifest, and you're doing it through a process. So there's a starting point, a tipping point, really, where you move from one system to another, and then you begin the expansion of the pattern through very specific processes. And permaculture is process-driven. The further away you move from the status quo, the less dependent you are on fossil fuel systems, the less dependent you are on centralized systems, the less dependent you are on artificial concepts. So it really does depend at what stage in the process you're sitting. It's very difficult to be completely independent of oil because the centralized system of control has enforced it into all aspects of life. So, I think our biggest challenge is technology. And as long as we're using technology, we are going to be based in oil until we can shift out of oil as a baseline resource for the development of technology. And, we do know and we do understand through science now and through the direction permaculture is taking is that every single resource in society that is utilized in the generation of technology and technological infrastructure can actually be accessed through natural living systems and natural products. And that's really where permaculture systems transition into. They transition from the artificial.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That we are back again. So sorry about these little
Are we
breaks
back
in the broadcast, guys. Please do let us know in the chat room or tweet at us if you're experiencing these breakups, and if there's anything you'd like us to maybe reiterate, or if you're not getting it, because we are just suffering some technical difficulty tonight. So back to you, Kent. Sorry to cut your train of thought there, but.
No. I mean, I don't know where we dropped the connection, so I'll just pick up again on what I was saying.
But you're right, everything is based on oil.
So we basically shifting out of a society that generates resources through fossil fuels into a society that generates resources through what we'd call natural capital. Mm-hmm. So, in my own life, I'm still using oil. I drive a vehicle, and it uses diesel. But the ethical construct of permaculture limits that usage. And, I'll just briefly describe the ethical construct. There are three ethics that we operate through, and we distill everything through. And the first ethic is care for the earth. So everything you do should be towards earth care. So if you're going to use, for example, any fossil fuels, you're using a bulldozer to do landscape surgery or earth towards creating more sustainable systems. You're not using that to create a dependency on more oil. The other ethic is care of the people. So you've always got to look at what you're doing and say, is this caring for people? Are we causing harm and loss through our actions and our systems, or are we supporting humanity? And the third ethic is taking any surplus that we generate and feed it back into the application of the first two ethics. And I think this is where a massive shift in permaculture from the mainstream exists, because we know the mainstream is a consumer system, and surplus does not go towards any support of humanity, any support of natural systems. Surplus goes into the pockets or into the ambit of a very, very small elite in society. So by establishing permaculture systems, what you're doing is you're moving energy away from a system that is predatory. And what I mean by predatory is that it is extractive. Our entire civilization is extractive. So if a system is going to be sustainable, it has to, in the very least, return what it uses. Mm-hmm. Ideally, we would like to return more than we use, and that's possible through applying natural law and applying natural principles into the design of our human settlements and our human systems, our economic systems, whatever they are. But the current status quo is more a system of plunder. And over the last few hundred years, that plunder has brought us to the brink. And I don't need to go into any detail on that. I think everybody listening to the show understands that. And which is why we're here, why we're listening, because we're looking for solutions. We need to start rebuilding natural capital. We need to start rebuilding human capital. And we need to start applying design into the social order and create an ecosystemic planet that cares for the earth itself, the people, and it reinvests any surplus back into those goals.
Fantastic. Wow, great. Thanks for that, Kent. So would you say then the goal of permaculture is to leave the planet in a better condition than what we found it? I imagine that would be the goal, just in a simple form, to put it that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, Faiz. I think it's important because, I'm a family man. And I've always got to ask, what world am I leaving for my children, and what future am I responsible for? Because here we are now. We create the past now, we create the future now by our actions, by our design, by our patterning into the environment. So ideally, we want to create a better future, and it's absolutely possible. And through permaculture or any ecosystemic design system, there are others out there like biomimicry, that is what we're aiming at.
Right.
And permaculture has been going for 33, 35 years, and the results speak for themselves. The fact is that the system, the mainstream system, has not applied it because it understands that it subverts its own foundations.
Right.
So we've just got to say, hell with that. We're not waiting for the mainstream.
Yeah.
We're not waiting for permission from anybody, from any politician, bureaucrat, legal system. We're just getting on with it. And that's really the power of permaculture, is that each one of us begins the journey in our own lives and starts to reclaim our power, our resources, and we start to relocalize our culture.
I like
and
that.
that in itself is where we're going in the future.
I like that.
Absolutely.
Just in closing, sorry
absolutely.
to cut you there, Faiz.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Go ahead.
what can we do to start being a part of this movement? I mean, we've kind of running out of time here, and you'll definitely be joining us again, hopefully, Kent. But what can we do to just get started into being more aligned with this kind of thinking?
It's a very good question, Julian. I think the best thing we can do is educate ourselves at this point, if one hasn't begun a journey. And the internet is just an incredible wealth of information on permaculture. It's a good starting point. And when you find the space in your life, the next step, the entry level into permaculture, is to do a permaculture design course. So once you've done that permaculture design course, you are capacitated in the design science, which you can then immediately begin applying within your own life. So that's what I suggest to anybody, is just start researching, start reading, start connecting up with people. There are lots of groups out there on the net. There are local groups in different cities and towns all over the world. And when you're able to do a permaculture design course, and the journey will unfold from that point naturally as a evolutionary succession. You don't have to worry about that. All it requires is commitment.
Can you give us any good links, anything to go and check out?
Well, I mean, look, there is so much. Permaculture is the fastest growing grassroots movement on earth. It is because permaculture is based in natural patterns, and the fundamental natural pattern is the Fibonacci sequence, which, if understood correctly, is an exponential fractal. Nature, we see it everywhere. You plant a seed, you get from one plant thousands of seeds. So the actual movement is radically diversifying. So there's no specific place itself. You can look at our website, www.permaculture.south-africa.co.za, and that will open some doors into opportunities to learn. But I'd just say Google permaculture and see what comes up, see what takes your interest, where your own particular interest lies in it, whether it's building, technology, gardening, social structures, and just dive in.
Wow, fantastic. Thanks for that, Kent. There's so much to talk about, so we definitely must get you on again. I had another question, but we'll keep it for the next time. So great. Thanks a lot, Kent, man. Really appreciate that, brother.
It's a pleasure, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, cheers, everybody.
Us,
we'll chat again there.
Thanks, Kent.
Okay, cheers, Julian.
Cheers, Kent.
Bye.
Lovely meeting you.
Right. So
we're about
how are we doing there, Julian?
Well, we're about to then have our second guest. I mean, it's really been flying by. Everything's going at frantic pace here. So basically, yeah, sorry for all the little disconnections we've been having. I don't quite understand why this is happening. I'm doing my best to remedy it on the side. I've been a bit quiet for the duration of that interview, and that is because I've been trying to figure out why some people are complaining that we're cutting out. So up next, Faiz, he's just lining BT up for us there in the background. And yeah, we're going to talk foreclosures. Well, we're going to get to know Brother Thomas as well. He used to be a regular guest when we did the show before, and we discussed a lot of common law. It was one of our biggest topics, and it was all basically geared to the build-up of when we filed papers at the Constitutional Court and we were waiting for them to respond, and we actually protested outside the Constitutional Court. We tried to gather some critical mass and get people to protest, because as far as we were concerned, they weren't upholding the Constitution, as far as we still are concerned. But as far as I know, nothing much has really transpired through that. They're basically ignoring us and refusing to uphold the Constitution. So as soon as Faiz is ready, we're gonna be joined by BT, and we're just gonna get a catch up on what's going on in the movement. We're gonna talk a little bit about foreclosures, and yeah, so everything should be peachy from there. Just
You're listening to ZATR Talk Radio.
Okay, so Faiz, BT.
Yeah, Brother Thomas is our next guest, and he's what is known as a people's attorney, not a regular attorney. Brother
Right.
Thomas, or BT as we know him, tell us a bit about yourself first, brother.
Well, I suppose you could do it better, Faiz. Let me just get to what I wrote about me.
Brother, I suspect you forgot your headset this evening, eh?
Yeah, I just realized this is a new laptop. I whipped the other one to death, and I just realized this one has got no plugins for a headset.
Okay. So excuse the fact
it
that
needs a
BT sounds a
USB.
little thin, but we're gonna continue. My experience is that BT, represents a lot of people. He's out fighting the good fight, and helping a lot of people become aware of things like the law and better understanding it, and helping people fight against the system that's just trying to steal everything from us, trying to get in our pockets as they do. And like I was saying, we were involved with a big kind of march in the Constitutional Court last year, and lots of things have progressed since then. I mean, what's been going on?
Yeah, look, I've been involved in assisting people in legal defense matters, especially against unlawful evictions and foreclosures. We've had some limited success, the success having been that in every situation where we used the documentation properly, the people are still inhabiting their homes or the land. And that's been great. But the people who changed during the course of the court case, obviously changes also change the outcome. So that's kind of some of the success that we've been having. And then, of course, education. Like Ken said earlier, it's all about education. Mandela also said education is the most powerful weapon that people can use to bring about change. And I believe that's key in this. So
Yeah, that's why we're doing these kinds of things.
Every
That's why
time
we're
that
having these chats.
Yeah, I would agree.
every
Education.
time we go into a court, every time you go into a court, you're educating that court. We've been told, in meetings that there's barristers and their wives are discussing common law and not realizing that they are oaths to Her Majesty the Queen.
Okay, well, that's an eye-opener for them, I would imagine. But
most people are uneducated, even those who are continuing this unknowingly perpetuating the system of slavery, even they are unaware of their actions.
Yeah, because they basically also indoctrinated, in a sense, mind controlled, and their reality is created for them. And in fact, our education system, when you talk about education, I completely agree, but I think it's more about re-education, because although the education system has lots of positives to it, they also teach people things that are not true. So at the same time, you're basically being mind controlled, you're basically being taught things that are not true, and so your reality is created for you. I mean, a lot of lawyers are not aware of, common law, natural law, how the world really works, and they're just familiar with statutory law. Again, in business school, they teach you that, banks are intermediaries. They act as, intermediaries between lenders and borrowers, which is completely untrue. And so loans are not loans, and in fact, loan agreements are completely invalid. But the point I wanted to make is about re-education. A lot of people are educated, but they're educated in many ways in the wrong way, and they need information that is true or correct, rather. Anyway, Peter, you can carry on.
Great. That's a little bit about me. We've had a couple of false starts along the way. We were involved with a group that wasn't all in truth and honesty and transparency, but now it seems like this year there's finally a group that's coming together, and my initial investigations have led me to believe that the International Tribunal for Natural Justice is the way through which we should be able to get justice. And
so explain that a little bit to us. What is that all about? What I mean, for people that don't know, because we've got a lot of people here that don't know what we're talking about, guys. What is international
tribunal for?
Basically, we're just going to start off with common law. Where it's from, just so people can get us an understanding. So I'm just going to read you here from Encyclopedia Britannica. Common law, also called Anglo-American law, the body of customary law based upon judicial decisions and embodied in reports of decided cases, that has been administered by the common law courts of England since the Middle Ages. Remember, this started probably around about 1200s with the Great Charter, and then 2 years later the Great Forest Charter. Until then, we had ecclesiastical law, and basically stemming from religion and from scripture, and being Anglo-Saxon, and then most of the member states of the Commonwealth, formerly known as the British Commonwealth of Nations, they also use common law. So in our society, common law is recognized, even though it's now it's ensconced in civil law, with the Afrikaners having pushed a movement towards Roman Dutch law rather than using English common law, which is only used in our constitution. Because we still oath to Her Majesty the Queen. Well, HM the Queen. And we haven't determined who HM the Queen is yet.
What do you mean?
BT, is common law a written law? Is it a man-made law, or is it a natural law?
It's opposed to civil law in that it's not enacted. So basically, it's set on decided principles. in law, common sense principles that were agreed upon in society and were kind of cast in stone, you can call it. So it's your maxims in common law.
Yeah, but who decided what they were? Is it something for me? For me, common law is a natural part of natural law. I know there's something called the common law or English common law. I don't know if it refers to the same thing, but for me, common law is I call it community law that pertains to the interaction between people. It's a natural law. It's unwritten. It's just the way things are. And you get natural universal law, or laws which govern how the universe operates, like the law of gravity. Now, the common law we're talking about, is it something that's natural, or has it been written by a group of people?
No, it hasn't been enacted, but
okay.
There's precedents that have been set, and then we've got famous teachers in common law like Lord Blackstone, who did the 4 commentaries on English common law.
Yes.
And these are also all based on natural law principles, and like you said, customs of communities.
Right. Yes.
Which is grounded on morals and ethics.
So using common law, is there any way that people can get remedy, with the situation they find themselves in with foreclosures and this banking situation? Will common law ever be a remedy for this situation?
Well, look,
not until we get it recognized.
Our laws are becoming so misunderstandable that you've got to have in order to have good moral, you've got to have people who understand or comprehend the law. So why have all these millions of laws when you just have one universal law?
Right.
And that's the principle of natural law. So I just want to read to you what natural law means then. 2 of the most basic tenets of natural law are, 1, that it is unlawful to harm others, and 2, that it is lawful to prevent deliberate harm from occurring or continuing if one has reasonable ability to do so. So the golden rule compels us to intervene when basic human rights violations take place. Under natural law, our rights include but are not limited to the right to sanctuary, the right to contract voluntarily, provided that we are trustworthy, and the right to obtain all knowledge necessary to inaugurate a truly viable future. These rights are to be enjoyed by all men and women and have never been nor ever will be the monopolized property of any group that isolates itself from the whole.
Okay.
That's basically natural law.
But so basically you're saying do no harm, cause no loss, basically. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
But we see the law that we follow is not really a law. Statutory law is not actually a law, it's just legal statutes. Is that why that, harm is caused to people all the time, people experience loss all the time, despite having to abide by the so-called law or legal statutes? Because it doesn't really recognize that no harm, cause no loss.
How many layers of this onion do you want to peel?
Tonight, just a few.
Just a few. Statutes and acts, it all pertains to that which is dead. There's no living in those rules and regulations. The law of the sea. It's all pertains to your strawman who has to be declared. Missing at sea, so presumed dead.
So the human being, the living human, is dead, and the corporate entity, the legal fiction, the straw man, is alive. Is that correct in statutory law?
Well, no, there's just no recognition because of jurisdiction. So you can imagine you standing on this little circle called land, and your straw man or your ID, which you claim to be yours, that's standing in the law of the sea. And everything in the law of the sea is dead. Okay? That's why Albie Sachs wrote his book, The Strange Alchemy Between Life and Law. But now, this is what common law does. Common law is living, because now it's you, the man, taking full accountability for your actions before a jury of peers, of equals. Okay?
Yeah.
And that's what is necessary to keep that balance of that judicial scale. Is the people we need the return of trial by jury courts.
So how is it possible as a human being to live in this world if in fact legal statutes don't apply to you but only to a legal fiction entity, a dead entity? I mean, how is it possible? It seems impossible, and obviously the evidence is there that it is impossible given what's happening in the world today. I was once asked, when I was talking about natural law, by a person, she asked me, but wouldn't the world be in chaos if we followed natural law? And I said to her, but haven't you looked around? The world is already in chaos because we're not following natural law. So it seems almost impossible as a living human, breathing human being to live in this world if you have to follow laws that apply to something that doesn't even exist, which is your legal fiction, straw man.
Yeah. Well, this whole beast is just eating itself by its own tail, you know.
And that's part of the deception.
Court cases for the High Court in Gauteng was 220,000 last year. It's it's an avalanche at the moment. They don't even have time to stamp your documents. You just throw them into this huge box with just piles and piles of documentation. You know, it's crazy. So
it's absolute insanity. I mean, it's. So I came across a video the other day which said humanity versus insanity, and I think that's so appropriate. It is humanity versus insanity. We're living in an insane situation.
Yeah.
And people's perceptions are obviously, as I said, managed earlier on. So people perceive themselves to be their name. And that is, I think, the crux of the matter here, is people don't really understand that they are not their name. And I actually, whenever I try to explain to people what I mean, I'm not going to go through it now. It'll take a bit of time to explain. I came up with 3 scenarios, and every single person, had to agree with me after I explained to them those 3 scenarios that they are, in fact, not their name. But prior to that, just a few minutes before that, they categorically said, yes, I am Mr. John Smith or whoever they said they were. And a few minutes later, they absolutely had to agree with me that they are, in fact, not Mr. John Smith, given those 3 scenarios that I sort of described to them. So It's about perception, about deception, rather, yeah.
But I mean, I think also just a big point that we must explain to people here is that what we basically trying to advocate here is that everybody understand the law. The law doesn't become bigger than us, and we need to really get our heads around it, and we need to operate within a law that is easily understandable by people. So that the people can, that we can basically assert our rights. Because at the moment, for the most part, we don't even know what our rights are. And I mean, BT, you always give us that fantastic saying: "He who does not assert he who fails to assert his rights has none." So. We this is also the reason for platforms like this, and I mean we're really just brushing over topics here this evening because these are extensive topics that we need to cover, and we're gonna have these guests back, Kent and BT, to go into a little bit more detail about these things. But we're just trying to give you guys a taste of what it's all about, and we'd love your feedback. We'd love for you to engage with us on the chat facility. We do once again apologize for all the little glitches we've been facing this evening. It's been first night glitches. This is Budget Radio, people. We're not doing it with any major budget. We've just come together as the people to bring this information to you. So, please let us know. Give us some feedback. Join in the conversation. Tweet at us at ZA Talk Radio. You can call in to 072 4199 700. You're welcome to come in, have your say, ask a question, tell us if you disagree with us. Because a lot of people tend to disagree when we discuss these things out in public. Would you guys not agree?
Yep.
Yeah.
Some people, they believe in government. They believe that somebody's got their best interest at heart. And I mean, it's an old saying, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So why are we fooled into thinking that these people care about us? We need to own these things. We need to understand banking. We need to understand the law. We need to understand how to attain our own food. You know, like we need to be able to do these things. We need to get back to being responsible for ourselves. In a nutshell, sovereignty.
Yep, absolutely. That is key, actually. It's absolutely key.
And the thing is, as well, right now we're sitting in a world where we've got legal fictions called corporations, which are chewing up the resources, which are behind all the pollution, etc., etc. And all it merely is people who've created something called a corporation, and now they're not even liable anymore. They don't even have to appear in court as a plaintiff, and they don't have to stand any accountability. So in 1912, one of the members of the Chicago bar wrote a whole document on how corporations have basically destroyed society, and that operating in common law and common law express trust is definitely a superior way of operating on all levels, because we have to have a system of accountability.
Absolutely.
We need to be able to have a court system where our public servants can be held accountable. Our judiciary. I mean, our judiciary is not accountable. And when I went to look at, read the uniform rules of ethics of the South African bar, in their hierarchy, the senior counsel has their patent from H.M. the Queen, you know. But therefore there's no accountability.
Yeah, that's a fundamental issue here, because human beings are hiding behind entities which don't actually exist now.
Exactly.
So how can you have a fundamentally honest society, when your foundations are rotten? Everything's built on a rotten, unethical, dishonest foundation, whether it's banking or the law or healthcare. The foundation is basically, to use a mild term, it's rotten. So that explains what is going on in the world. When people can hide behind entities, human beings can hide behind entities that don't exist, and they don't have to come to court to account for anything. It's just the entity, the corporation, can appear on their behalf, which is an impossible situation. In fact, when I first got to know about this thing called a corporation many years ago, it made absolutely no sense to me. Absolutely no sense. It made absolutely no. I couldn't believe that people were writing about this in textbooks and actually believing it. But that's the world we live in. Anyway.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about, a lot of this information is available on the Gift of Truth, not so? That's www. Just give us the address.
Yeah, if you go to www.giftoftruth.wordpress.com, and then you'll just look at the different pages there. You've got pages to start off would be like your rights. There's a page on common law. In the next month or so, I'll have a page on customary law as well, because that's equally important, especially in Africa. Our customary law was also basically pushed aside and also civilized, inverted brackets, into acts, which has got no remote relation to true customary law. And as long as the customary law is in accordance with our Bill of Rights, which is the supreme law of the land. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as I say, if you just coming back to this issue of corporations. If you repeat a lie or repeat something often enough, it becomes the truth, or it becomes taken as something normal. And that's what's happened with many issues in the world today. And also, I think with corporations, you keep telling them this thing exists. It's something that makes sense.
It's well established.
And then people just
That's
believe
all
it.
it is. It's well established, and I mean, it's by no chance. We all know that it's been orchestrated this way. These people understand mass psychology better than we ever will. Well, let's not say that, because we will understand it too, and we will harness it, and we will bring awareness to you guys, and that's why we're trying to start discussions like this, and just make people aware of what's going on. And really bringing it down to its basics. So maybe we'll start attacking this, and give us your feedback, guys. Tweet us at ZA Talk Radio. Write on our Facebook page, ZA Talk Radio. Let us know what you liked about this, what you'd like to understand about this, and we start picking away at what it's all about. Our understanding at least, because. For me, it all boils down to contracting. I mean, it's all about contracting. We need to understand how to contract, and we need to understand how to establish things as truths, And a lot of the time, people don't see what we talk about as being truths, because the lies have actually been so well established. So when you say, like, for instance, somebody says, no, I'm going to get a home loan, the bank is going to give me money, because it's so well established in their minds that the bank has got some money to give them. So they take it for granted.
It's a belief.
It's a belief, and it's a lie. But when we say the bank has got no money, nobody can identify with that. They like, no, because you see, it's not well enough established that is actually the case. And I mean, they've used the media to the best of their ability to do this brainwashing to us. So we need to try and use it again, and we need to have more and more spaces like this where we can discuss these things. I mean, YouTube is full of it. So I'm going to encourage you guys to spread this link around. We'll be back again next week on Sunday night. Not that we're done for now. We've still got one or two things to cover here, but we'll keep doing this. So spread the link around, spread our Twitter around and our Facebook. We share a lot of valuable information on Twitter and on Facebook. And we've got access to people like Brother Thomas, who's actually very learned in this regard. I mean, this brother spends hours upon hours reading documents that none of us would actually want to get into. I mean, for instance, getting into the Constitution. I mean, how many of us have actually read the Constitution? Have actually digested it? Not just read it, not just browsed through it and taken things at face value, but like inspected what it all means, And in my time that I've spent over the last few years with BT, I've learned a lot about the Constitution, as something as simple as that. So we've got access to people like this, and we'd like to bring them to you, and we'd like to continue this conversation and continue educating ourselves together, because maybe you've got something to teach us as well. I mean, we're not against learning, are we, guys? We don't think we know it all.
No, not at all. We actually know really little. In fact, nothing in the greater scheme of things, I would imagine. Not nothing, but I mean, there's so much to know, actually.
I always say the sooner that we start teaching our kids that this is by no means the answer, this is just a working model. And please, if you've got any better solutions, come up with it. The sooner we get into that sort of paradigm, the better off we'll be. But I mean, it's not in the agenda of the man to do that. You know what I'm saying? I always refer to the establishment as the man, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we need to look at finding remedies and not, the hows and the whys.
No, exactly.
This is what we like getting stuck on.
Yeah. But share with us...
it's a meme. We've been conditioned into these memes, and we really need to be careful about what we say. Every word that comes out of our mouth creates
words of power. Yeah, no, words of power for sure. But share with us maybe a little bit about any successes that you've experienced through this process, and maybe even some of the hardships. But I mean, maybe leave us on a good note, PT, with like where are you at now? What are you busy working on? I understand that you've been traveling a little bit on peace missions. Piecing for peace.
I did go off on a peacekeeping mission, and I've been into it for a month, and I had to come back. I'm assisting the Zederbergs here against Standard Bank. and just been doing a lot more research. And the latest, there's now an investigation going on with the Specialized Crimes Unit investigating the allegations of fraud. So things are looking better on that regard. Then in the States, there's 2 trials at the moment, which the one should be concluded within the next 2 or 3 weeks. And if it runs the way it's supposed to, then we're going to have a remedy from that. Otherwise, by October, when the International Tribunal for Natural Justice, when they open their doors, then we'll have a case. And I think precedent should already be set by the Rod Klaas case. I believe he's filing the first case with the International Tribunal for Natural Justice. So we're moving ahead. It's going to be up to the small group to bring about the change. And it's always been like that. And it's probably always going to be like that. Yeah. We're going to have 2,000 people that are going to be key in bringing about the change. And if we don't, well, we'll have a total collapse.
I mean, but they've kind of... The total collapse, everybody can see it coming, but it's also a little bit by design. And I shouldn't say a little bit, it's a lot by design. And they wanted to kind of collapse on itself so that they once again can give us the remedy to the problem, so that they can tell us that.
Well, this is, sorry, somebody said the other day, this is not a collapse. This is a controlled demolition.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, but I mean,
beautifully orchestrated, I must say.
It's the blueprint, the grand design. Look, we planned to only be on air till 9 o'clock. I feel like we've just got so much to discuss.
Next time we'll dig into another little chunk of it. Every time, next week we could speak on the foreclosures. I'm also doing more advertising with that because we are trying to get 350 people together for our class action lawsuit.
Okay.
For October.
Oh, yeah, brother. Yeah. There's a lot to talk about. But we're definitely going to have you back again. Of course, I mean, there's so much information you have to share with us. So we'll basically be getting you back, brother, if you're available in the coming weeks. But I'd like to thank you. Thank you for accepting our invitation once again. To come on the show tonight, and for sharing that information and your knowledge. I appreciate it tremendously. Thanks, brother.
Yeah.
And thanks for you guys for bringing this back. It's really, really needed. Every little bit helps.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thank you.
We're gonna do our best to keep this thing going and to structure it really well this time, and to get the information across that we need to get across. We've been running a as big as we can marketing campaign, no budget involved. So please do help us as well, guys. Spread the link around. Please let people know about it. We will be better next week already. I guarantee you that. We've had some teething problems this week, but our systems will be in full steam this next time. You can stream us from a smartphone. You can stream us from any device that can access the internet, literally. So do that. Spread the link around. Spread our name around. Herman just asked us on the chat. He's asking us why class action. I mean, I feel we need to answer, man. We're not going to leave him hanging this week. BT?
Well, we have to. In order to have a class action, you need 350 people. So we're going out. We're putting people at intersections with billboards, and
but whose rules are these?
We're going. Sorry,
whose rules are these? Are we playing within their kind of rules to an extent? I'm just asking.
No, it's what I'd like to arrive with at the International Tribunal, Okay. So at the moment we already have 35 cases about, and I'm sure we'll get 350 because we haven't been going how can you say it, public, but we're going public in the next week or two. We're actually going on an active campaign to find people who are going through foreclosures, who have been foreclosed, and finding the remedy and moving forward,
Okay, that's good to know. So there you have it, guys. Thanks again, BT, for being with us. And basically, if you know of anybody that's going through that situation, I'm sure you can get in touch with Brother Thomas through the Gift of Truth website. We'll post it on our Facebook page, so it's important that you like our Facebook page and also follow us on Twitter, because we'll post all these links on Twitter, on our Facebook page. Spread the word. Get involved. Let's start making this movement happen. We've had quite a healthy listenership tonight. Thank you all for tuning in, taking the time to tune in to us. And we apologize again for the little hiccups that we've encountered. I'll tell you exactly what it was. I was trying to stream this thing at too high a bit rate. I was trying to give you too good quality out there, and I've had to dumb it down a little bit. So if the quality's dropped off a bit, it's just so that you know that we can maintain the stream and that everything runs smoothly. Domingo, Gateway is common law Gateway is a common law cooperative that you can all participate in. That's correct. So yeah, guys, thanks for being part of the show tonight, and we encourage more participation from everybody so that we can keep this dialogue going. We can keep this education going. If you've got something to share, you're welcome to call us. We've got that number that we'll make available also on our links, so that next week you're prepared to call in. And anything else that you'd like to add there in closing, Faiz?
No, I'd like to thank the listeners for tuning in this evening and listening to what we have to say and for interacting with us. We really appreciate it. And as Julian says, spread the word if you can. That'll be great. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks, guys. You've been listening to
ZA Talk Radio. You're listening to ZA Talk Radio.
Follow us on Twitter at ZA Talk Radio.
Good night. God bless.